Hi, good morning, everybody. Nikki Burnett here. Today's Taste Life Nutrition Radio and Podcast streaming live on KUHSdenver.com, where I've had so much fun. I've had a lot of shows, just me. Maybe I'll do this a little more regularly, but this is always super fun for me to be able to chat about the things that I think are fascinating, and which kind of leads me into my gratitude, because I think that I fully believe gratitude can change the world. And so over the weekend, this last weekend, we attended a conference, and it was a conference that was all about the microbiome, right? And so we've been talking a ton about the microbiome, and the dysfunction or the dysbiosis or the problems that a dysfunctional microbiome can lead to. And so that's what this conference was it it was the microbiome as it relates to heart health, as it relates to hormone health and brain function and detox and women going through perimenopause and menopause and on and on. I mean, the brains of the people up on the stage who were there to present are just mind-blowing, right? It's so much fun. They're amazing and amazingly smart. So I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for the people who are up on stage, who are there, who are leading the cutting edge treatment plans and therapies, and who are there to serve, right? I mean, that's so much of those of us who are in healthcare in any capacity. We're there to serve and to learn, and we learned so much. And so, because we talk a lot about detox, there are a lot of misconceptions around detox, and I think that we want to have a better understanding of it. We've talked a lot about this in the past, but we've not talked about it as it relates to the microbiome. And so we have to have a good, healthy microbiome in order to detox properly. Why is that? Because we have specific microbes that help us to detox. There are specific microbes that help to pull out heavy metals, right? There is one of the best things. So I talk a lot about how the body is not dysfunctional, even though I used that word a few minutes ago. I know it. I say it because it's easier to understand, right? But I don't fully believe in a dysfunctional body and a dysfunctional microbiome. I believe in that we give the body what it needs. It is there to keep us alive, and it's doing everything it knows to do to keep us alive. Its ultimate job is to keep us alive. And if we're not supporting our microbiome, if we're not eating the proper nutrients, if we're sitting in a toxic environment, if we're talking to ourselves negatively and thinking negative thoughts about ourselves, right? All of these things will perpetuate a situation where the body is not going to function optimally. So what's it going to do? It's going to do all that it knows to function the best that it can with what it has available to it, right? And so that's where we have to come in and we partner with our bodies, right? I often will hear clients and patients say, I just feel like my body is against me. I'm always fighting my body. If we can change that perception and start to learn how we can partner with our body, then it changes to, okay, my body is an amazing creation of God, and if I am in partnership with my body, then we learn how to listen to each other, right? It's got a language of its own. And so we want to start to realize that symptoms are the body trying to talk to us. The body's always trying to talk to us, whether it's a difficult conversation or it's an amazing conversation, right? If we are listening to what it's trying to tell us, then we start to learn, we start to understand. And sometimes we have to look outside of ourselves, right? That's why I do what I do. That's why any of us in healthcare does what we do, is because we want to learn, we want to dig, and we want to understand. And I want to do that with myself, which I have been doing. We talked a little bit about this. I've been doing for, I've been doing it for most of my life, but over the past 5 years or so, I've been really digging deep, which is, I'm just going to go ahead and throw it out there, what your precision blueprint is. I've taken what I've learned about myself, what I've learned about, everything that I know over the last several years, and made an approachable, super individualized program for people where we put a lot of cool things together. We create a report. You can take that report or we can dig deeper, right? So it really is about what you want. So it's approachable, it's inexpensive, it's fun for me, it's fun for you. You get to start learning that, that depth of your body that maybe you didn't know in the past. So anyway, that's why I have that up here. You can text Blueprint. I know not everybody can see it, but all the information will be posted in with the show and with the podcast sites. But you know, feel free to reach out, ask me questions. It's I've been having a lot of fun with it. I think my clients have been having a lot of fun with it. I've been doing this for a while now, not in the same capacity, but with patients and clients, and now taking it to a different level. Like I said, that is very, very approachable for just about anyone. And actually, right now it's $47 with 45 minutes with me. So you get your report, and you get a little time with me, and we chat about it. And it's about a 20-page report, so it's not small. It's a report that's all about you. So super cool, super fun. But with that being said, going to this conference, it just deepens my knowledge on the microbiome and all of the things that the microbiome does, and has been so much fun to learn and to dig. So there are a couple of things on here. So I've got my notes in front of me. One of my favorite things is I can take notes, and then I actually will upload them in GPT that helps me to bullet point them. So really cool, and it's easy for me then to kind of go through and talk about, really just talking about my notes and all the things that I learned, which, again, if you're a nerd like me, it's really cool stuff. So there are a lot of things that we don't understand about detox, and I think first and foremost is to understand that detox is not a cleanse. Detox is a system. Detox happens due to multiple organs, right? We have the liver that detoxifies. We've got the microbiome that detoxifies. We've got the kidneys and the lungs and the skin. All of these things are detoxifying organs. We've got the lymphatic system. So all of these things work together in order to allow our body to get rid of the things that it doesn't need. So whether that's toxins in our environment, or whether it's estrogens that we don't need, whether it's cholesterol we don't need, a lot of the toxins that we deal with on a daily basis, well, I say a lot of them, I think all of them, are fat soluble, which means they sit in our tissues, and they can sit and create problems. So if our liver is not conjugating or essentially changing, right, converting fat soluble toxins over to water soluble toxins, then they can't be eliminated. So they've got to be water soluble to be eliminated. I mean, how cool is that? How cool is it that the liver can change fat soluble to water soluble so it can be eliminated? It's amazing. And talk about a God thing, right? This is the stuff that you're just like, holy smokes, it does so much for us, right? The cholesterol is also where we produce the liver is also where we produce cholesterol, most of our cholesterol, almost all of it. And so having a good, healthy liver that supports detoxification also supports cholesterol production, so we can have healthy hormone production, so we have healthy cellular integrity and brain function, right? Cholesterol is so important for all of these things. Totally other topic that I can't spend time on today, but I need you to think about that if you've been told you need to be on statins, right? What do statins do? They're going to lower your cholesterol. It's going to impact so many things about you. It can be really problematic, so keep that in mind. So as we move through some of my notes here, I'm just going to kind of, chitty chat about the notes and, some surprising things that I learned. And some things that I obviously have known for a long time, but they're not the things that we usually hear, which is what I was really hoping for this. We've got a lot of myths around detoxification. Detoxification is daily. It's not a thing that we do quarterly. It's not a thing that we do, annually. It's a daily function of the body that we need to support every single day. And so one of the things that is this really fascinating part of detoxification and the microbiome is that estrogen, if not properly detoxified, can feed yeast, right? So how many of us have fungal overgrowth, have yeast infections, chronic yeast infections, have brain fog, have the inability to think properly, have joint pain, have um, uh, 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 you know, memory issues, searching for your word issues. I don't think I have a fungal infection, but sometimes I'm searching for my words, right? And so this fungal overgrowth can really create a problem. And what we see is when bacteria in the microbiome, right? So we have our good, healthy commensal keystone bugs. When those guys are depleted, we don't have enough of them to support our body, our microbiome, all the things that they're supposed to do, fungus goes up. So bacteria goes down, fungus goes up. So we want to, when we're doing a GI panel, we want to understand that process, because we can look. This is the best thing in the world, is being able to see which of our species, specifically our keystone species, are not optimal, and then we can start to understand, okay, the infection that we might be dealing with, is it actually bacterial or is it potentially fungal? And I think a lot of the fungal infections get missed. And I'm getting this more and more as I collaborate and talk with other practitioners. If you are a practitioner out there and you want to dig into cases and share and learn about cases, this is something that we're starting to get out into, the practitioner world. Functional Medicine Grand Rounds is a group that we have put together. I say we. I joined after it was already put together, but I am more of a foundational member. But it's something that is there for practitioners, so we can support each other, look at these really hard, complicated cases, and dig in. So if you're a practitioner out there, look for Functional Medicine Grand Rounds and join us and have some fun. It's a cool thing. So if estrogens are not properly detoxified, so then they can trigger immune dysfunction, and that mold toxins can block an enzyme in the body that makes hormones in the first place. So much there. So we have so many people who struggle with immune dysfunction, whether it's at a surface level, right? I get a cold all the time. I have sinus infections all the time. Or is it somebody who is struggling with multiple chronic issues and doesn't know how to manage it, right? And so having an overgrowth of yeast that is, it might not be pathogenic, but it's opportunistic, meaning that it's normal to the body. It finds an opportunity where it has the ability to proliferate because it doesn't have the bacteria to keep it under control, and therefore it becomes pathogenic, right? And so we want to make sure that we're understanding this part of the microbiome. And so then we also have probably more people than we realize who struggle with mold toxicity. So mold toxicity can come from food, it can come from our environment, it can come from buildings. I'm seeing it constantly. Now, there are specific SNPs or epigenetic variants that may make us more or less susceptible to mold toxicity. But I'll tell you that, I mean, what's interesting is you'll see if somebody is in a home with mold and has had some mold exposure, you might have somebody who doesn't react to it all, and you might have somebody who reacts severely to it. So it's not good ever, because it's going to create an inflammatory response. But some people just don't have the ability to manage it like others do, and so it can be a hard place to be when one person is super sick and you can't figure out why, and the other one's like, I'm fine, it's not a big deal, right? It always is a big deal, but it really impacts some people more than others. And so, we talk a lot about these, these spirals, right? People who start with, one symptom and they just kind of spiral out of control. I can see this when I'm talking with clients and patients, and they are, I do a timeline. So I take everything that they say and I put it into a timeline. So you actually, like, to me, it's literally in my head, but you see this timeline and this spiral out of control. Well, if someone has mold exposure doesn't go away. You got to get rid of it. right? And so you have to physically, therapeutically get rid of um, mold from the body, and so it can interfere with estrogen production. And so, we have then women who struggle with hormonal symptoms and men who struggle with hormonal symptoms, right? Men also have estrogen, very small amounts, but they do. And it can create problems. And one of the things that I neglected to mention a minute ago is when we have hormonal dysfunctions, it can be due to our innate, our natural hormone levels, but we have also in our environment, talking about toxins, right? We've got our xenoestrogens, which are estrogen mimickers. And so we talk about this a lot, but estrogen mimickers can come from the food that we're eating, the pesticides, the herbicides. It can come from the preservatives and the chemicals and the toxins and the plastics and the things that we use on our hair and on our skin and to wash our clothes and to clean our homes, right? So if we're not super aware of the stuff that we're putting in our environment, whether it's our physical environment or in our home or whatever, these things, they add up, and the toxic load adds up, and the estrogen mimickers add up for men, women, for kids. And so what these estrogen mimickers do is they bind super tightly to our estrogen receptor sites, and it doesn't allow our own natural estrogen to do its job, and then we have more and more and more of this this estrogen, whether natural or chemical, and it puts a massive burden on everything that we are, right? Our endocrine system, our detoxification systems, all of those things. So if you're watching, first things first, right? Super basic, super foundational. Look at the products that you use in your home, and then on your body, right? So you can go to Environmental Working Group, it's ewg.org, and put in a search. And you can put in a search for a product, you can put in a search for a specific ingredient, and it will tell you it'll essentially rate the ingredient, right? It'll tell you if it's a really great one or if it's a really terrible one and why. And most of the time, so I don't know, I'm not going to give it a percentage, but most of the time for your conventional products, it's going to come up that it is a C, a D, an F, and it'll tell you why. So is it a carcinogen? Is it an endocrine disruptor, right? Does it cause respiratory issues? Is it an allergen? So it'll give you a reason, it'll rate it. So it's a really great way to start to understand the products that you use in your home and on your body and on your kiddos and on your animals. And so it also has the Clean 15 and the Dirty Dozen. So looking at your vegetables and your fruits, are they organic? Are they clean? Are they not clean? Now, getting a little bit on a tangent, but I think it's important to understand that just because a food, a fruit or a vegetable comes back as a Clean 15, it doesn't mean it just means it's less pesticides, right? You can't wash pesticides and herbicides off. They are in and throughout all of the produce, right? It's in every cell of the produce. So it might be better than other things. It might be better than the Dirty Dozen, but it doesn't mean that it's super clean. So you want to do your best to know where your food comes from. I know it's really hard to do unless you're like growing your own food and doing the farmers markets, and here in Colorado you've got half the year that's really cold. So we just do the best that we can, but I think having the understanding is really important. One of the things that I have had fun doing over the last couple of years is I grow more food than we're going to use, and I freeze it. So I've got our fruits and vegetables that are in our freezer that a lot of times can last us through the colder months. So I know not everybody can do that, and I'm not a great gardener yet. I'm pretty good, but this year wasn't as great as I'd hoped it was, but I still got stuff in the freezer. So that makes me happy. So here are the things. We talked a lot about the plastics, and the pesticides and that kind of thing. what is becoming such a problem too, and probably most of you have already heard about this, but plastics now are no longer just a problem because they're plastic. They're also now a problem because they're nanoplastics, right? So they're showing up in umbilical cord blood. It's showing up in our cardiovascular system, right? I mean, what the hell? Like, it's just so scary. And then the last time, I don't know if it's the last time, it's not the last time I went diving, but it was last time I went diving in Belize. I do think it has something to do with the tide, but everywhere I looked was trash in the ocean. It was so sad and so hard. And I knew I fully believe that the earth knows how to heal itself, and God knows what He's doing. I'm not one who believes in humans as essentially a virus here on this earth. But it is sad that we have polluted things so terribly. So I know there are a lot of people who are organizing to clean that stuff up, and I hope we do, and I hope that we start to learn how to better, dispose of these things, because they're huge problems for us. So, it's going to be in our water. So as far as our water is concerned, what are you doing to filter your water? Do you use a Brita filter that does nothing? Think about doing something like distilling your water. Not everybody believes that is the best way of doing it, but in my research and in my understanding and in the conferences that I go to and I listen to the people, that is the best way to make sure your water is as clean as can be. Over and above reverse osmosis, over and above any other filter. A lot because it gets out the radiation, where there's, as far as I know, nothing else that gets out the radiation in our water, especially just filtering it. So think about that. If you're uncomfortable with that, because it does pull out the minerals. We get minerals in our food that we're drinking every day, but I'll take minerals. I'll put minerals in my dog's water. So you can think about, you can put, good Himalayan sea salt or something in your water if that makes you feel better. But I think that having good, healthy, clean water is, and distilling is best. I have a distiller on my counter. It runs day and night. So I think that that's an important one to keep in mind. And it's foundational. We are supposed to drink water every single day, mostly as much as we can, right? We don't want to totally overdo it, but most of us don't drink enough water. This is part of our detoxification system. It's going to support our microbiome. So it's important to make sure you're drinking it regularly, and that it's as clean as you can get it. And so the other things that we look at, there are heavy metals. There are the EMFs, the electromagnetic frequencies, that are unnatural to us. So, we have normal, natural magnetic frequencies and electric frequencies throughout, from the earth, our bodies. We're all these, amazing, beautiful electric beings. But the ones that come from all of this equipment that's around me, right? I'm surrounded by this equipment. It's in these computers and the Wi-Fi and all the things. But what is it that we can do to protect ourselves? So there are things that we can do. I tend to keep my phone in I can't remember what they're called right now, but the little metal bags that protect me from my phone and my iPad, and then also protect from anybody gathering my data, right? It also saves the battery. So cool things that are out there that can help to protect us from the things that we need to use, right? We can't be perfect. We can't always just go and unplug the Wi-Fi, but what can we do to manage the impact of some of these things? And going back to epigenetics, there are variants that some people tend to react more strongly to EMFs than others. I've seen my genetics. I'm not one of those people, but I know lots of people who do. And so that's one of the things, that if you're in a situation that is super chronic and you can't figure out why, and you've done all of the things, then is it a situation where the EMFs around you are creating more of a problem? A lot of times I'll tell my clients and patients, if it's at all possible, go for a long weekend, go for a week, whatever it is, to a place where there is no Wi-Fi, right? Just totally disconnect and be as far away from it as you can. When you go camping or whatever it is that you can do, and see how you feel. One specifically, a client that I had, I asked her that because we started going down this road of, why is she not getting better? And as we start to, it's always peeling back the layer of the onion, right? And so we get to that point. She said, I always love going camping because I feel so much better when I go camping. I'm like, massive light bulb, right? And so then you start to learn, okay, this is a problem for me. What can I do in my local environment that's going to help me to manage better? Um, and so all of these toxins that we've been talking about, they mimic antibiotics, and so they wipe out microbial diversity. So we talk about keystone species. These keystone species are these sort of basic basic microbes that should be in our bodies. And we've got, sort of these all kinds of bugs that are supposed to be in there, but these are the basic ones that are being wiped out. And so anytime we take an antibiotic, anytime we eat herbicides and pesticides, all of this stuff wipes out our oral microbiome, our gut microbiome, for women, our vaginal microbiome. If you have recurrent yeast infections, this is a problem. So if it's recurrent, it's a problem. If you have consistent UTIs, it could be fungal overload, could be bacterial, right? So constant chronic sinus infections, ear infections, these are all likely a sign of significant dysbiosis. So we want to manage that, and we got to stop. We have to understand the why behind this, so we're not constantly taking antibiotics. This functional medicine grand rounds group that I'm a part of, there are a couple of docs in there who are like, antibiotics are never ever necessary. There are other ways of managing situations where you don't have to do antibiotics. So that's your choice, right? It's you make your decisions on what you need to do, but having that in the back of your head, that if you can find somebody or learn or figure out better ways that are not using antibiotics, then that's a plus. It can take 1 to 3 years to get a microbiome back in place once you take a round of antibiotics, right? It can be a big problem. And so if you do have to take it, you got to really, really superdose on your probiotics. It's not, this is not willy-nilly. It is really bringing in the keystones, doing everything that you can to support the good fibers, right? Inulin and glucomannan and acacia fiber and all of these different fibers, from your fruits and your vegetables, that can help to support your microbiome. And so there are specific fibers for specific bugs. And this is really cool, where we can start to, when we do a GI panel, when we start to understand the microbes that we need to bring back in, what are the fibers that we also need to bring back in, the prebiotics that support those specific bugs. This is part of the cool stuff that I'm doing more and more of, is digging into the types of fibers that support those bugs. Even if you don't take a probiotic, bringing in the fibers that can help to support the right types of bugs that we need to optimize our health. Our microbiome is 70% of our immune function, right? So we have to have a good, healthy, robust microbiome to be as healthy as possible and to fight. We're moving into the fall season, right? Fall and winter. This is when people start getting sick. It's already happening. So we want to be able to fight that stuff. This is one of the best ways to do it, right? So let's see. Plastics accumulating in endocrine tissues, right? So we're talking about plastics, these microplastics. So they're accumulating in the ovaries, the testes, the adrenals, right? They can be really, really problematic if we are, if we're trying to support our hormone function and we've got plastics loaded up in our ovaries. I mean, it's just crazy. So what can we do to support those, to support these body functions, to allow the body to be optimal and not, and the thing is too, I talk a lot about this. It's not like it's the scariest thing in the world. The body is meant to detox these things. The body is meant to take a lot. It's so beautiful the way that we are created, so beautifully created to help us to live optimally, right? So yes, it's bizarre and it's crazy that we can have plastics in our ovaries, but we have the ability to get that stuff out too, or to manage it, right? So we start taking off as much burden as possible, right? We start giving the body what it needs. We start, eating good, healthy food. organic, bringing in the nutrients, understanding what the body's trying to tell us, as much of the burden that we can take off, then it can manage the burden that we can't manage, right? There's a lot of stuff that we can't manage, and that's part of it. But that's why it's so beautifully and amazingly created, because if we work, like I said, in partnership with our body, then we have the ability to live the best life we can, right? Because because there's a really beautiful partnership there. So let's see. Let's go into your microbiome is your first line of defense. And so one of the things that I think is really important to really grab onto, because I think so many of us don't understand this, is that or we're struggling so much, right? So think about heartburn. We struggle so much with heartburn, with indigestion, right? And so we're put on these acid blockers and PPIs. And so if we are blocking the natural acid in our gut, then we're blocking the ability to manage microbes that come in orally, that can set up shop and hang out and create a lot of problems, right? So that's parasites, it's worms. Yes, worms. I mean, we have them and it happens. But if we don't have enough fire in the gut, then it's not going to allow us to, it's not going to be protective. We're not going to break down our nutrients the way that we're supposed to. And then we're going to be nutrient depleted, right? So if we're nutrient depleted, we're not supporting our microbiome. If we're nutrient depleted, we're not supporting all of our organ systems and our digestion, right? So you wonder why people end up with osteoporosis, cardiovascular disease, when they've been on PPIs for, a year, 10 years, 15, 20 years. And this is what I see. Imagine being on a PPI for 10 years when it's indicated for 2 weeks. This is maddening. Imagine the amount of deficiency people are struggling with, and you wonder, oh man, I was just diagnosed with osteoporosis. What's going on, right? The body doesn't know how to function if it doesn't have the nutrients that it needs. I mean, it's super foundational. And so, moving on down the GI, we support the microbes in order for it to produce these really cool short chain fatty acids. So short chain fatty acids are protective of the gut lining. It also supports our microbes, and so we can eat things that help our microbes to produce short chain fatty acids. So think about which most people don't think about. I get that, but like green banana flour, or just eating a green banana. So a super hard green banana. There's no sweetness to it, but it really helps to support your microbiome. Those will produce short chain fatty acids. And so you can also, because not everybody loves green bananas, I don't. I don't know that I've ever eaten one intentionally, but I do have green banana flour. And so you can take green banana flour and you can put it in your baked goods or whatever you want, and that's going to support your microbiome, your short chain fatty acid producing microbes. Other things that are really cool. I'm not a huge fan of potatoes, only because they're just super starchy. My blood sugar tends to spike, and so I try to be really careful about managing my blood sugar. But if you cook a potato and then you cool it, that cooking and cooling process, it creates a resistant starch, which feeds your microbiome. So cook and cool your potatoes. You can reheat them, but I've done that. So I'll go and I'll have my protein. I tend to eat protein with my carbs because the way that I'm made. This comes from my research that I've been doing on myself, right? And so again, part of your precision wellness blueprint, this is the stuff that we learn. Fascinating. Anyway, so I eat my protein, and then I eat my cold potatoes or my reheated potatoes. And I'm doing this, I don't do a bunch of them, but I'm doing this because I know I want to give my microbiome everything that it needs. So I'm always mixing in different kind of fibers. I'm always mixing in the green banana flour, the cooled white potatoes. You can also do cooked and cooled legumes if you tolerate legumes. You can do cooked and cooled rice. Not a huge fan of rice, but you can get some of these ancient, grain rice that I think is probably okay. But again, going back to the cooking and cooling process is what creates this resistant starch and supports the microbiome. Really, really cool stuff. Um, let's see, what else do we have here? Um, diversity is the biggest thing. So that's why, when I've been digging into the different types of fibers, and so I look at what each fiber does and the specific species that it supports. So I do this for me, and I'm always mixing it up, and I do this for my clients and patients. Not everyone though can manage this, and so if you don't have the ability to, I say not the ability, if you eat certain things and you get super uncomfortable, you get bloated, you get farty, that kind of stuff, the goal is not to just eat through it. You don't want to do that either, but you want to manage the reason why this is happening in the first place. Usually it's due to some kind of infection, right? And so when you if you want to start bringing in a bunch of different fibers, but you have GI issues like that, note which ones are causing you problems. And that can be, can help to kind of be a little indicative about what's going on. But also, you want to address what's going on because you want to be able to bring those fibers in. That's like doing low FODMAP. I have a huge problem with practitioners out there who just tell you to go do low FODMAP if you have bloating. Because high FODMAP foods are super important. They are foods that we need to eat. We need to eat a large, wide variety of food. We need to constantly eat different foods because it's the different foods, especially your fruits and vegetables, that are going to support your microbiome. Your antioxidant activity, right? This is the stuff that we need on a daily basis, but sometimes we can't eat them. So you got to ask why. It's not just because it's the way you're made, right? There is an imbalance likely of the microbes that's not allowing for you to manage it as you should, as the body should. So we got to get rid of whatever's going on and support the microbiome. It might just be that we need to superdose probiotics and then feed them with the right fibers, and then we start to find balance in the microbiome, and then we can start bringing in the others. But you want to do it slow and steady. And sometimes you just bring in like teeny tiny little bits, and you just do a little bit and a little bit and a little bit, and you build on that as you then are building your correct bugs to help to manage and reduce the amount of the opportunistic or potentially pathogenic bugs that are there and that are creating the problems, right? So let's see. What most people don't realize too is when we have a loss of microbial diversity, what we usually see is that foods that we're eating, so we've got these undigested fats and proteins, what do? They ferment in the colon then. That's not okay either. So we don't want fats and proteins in the colon, right? We not as undigested food. They're supposed to digest in the small intestine, then go through the colon in order to be eliminated. But if they're getting to the colon and not broken down, then they ferment in the colon and create lots of like ammonia and junk, right? A lot of discomfort. This is why we have to go every day. Ideally, we poop three times a day. Not everybody does that. Probably most people don't do that. But if you get to that point, you're like, yay, this is awesome. But not everybody does, but it's at least once a day. I mean, your goal is once a day, and it needs to be top of mind for those of you who aren't going once a day. Figure it out, whether it's magnesium. My favorite product is Cellcore Bowel Mover. Works really, really well. Those are a couple of the great things to do that are healthy and not just these stimulants that move the colon, because you don't want to do that either. But the right type of magnesium, Cellcore Bowel Mover is awesome stuff. And so if you do have the fats and proteins that get into the colon, then it creates these toxic metabolites. And so what they can do then is it's fuel for these gram-negative bacteria. Not all gram-negative bacteria are bad, but a lot of them are. And so what it then happens is it can, you're pushing inflammation, you're pushing leaky gut, lipopolysaccharides, which are these metabolites from gram-negative bacteria get into the bloodstream, and then there's, things go haywire, right? Because it's not supposed to be there. So massive red flags by the immune system if you get LPS, these lipopolysaccharides, into the bloodstream. And then, once this starts happening, you've got leaky gut, and you've got the LPS in the bloodstream, and then what else is going to get in the bloodstream? It's bacteria, fungus, things like that aren't supposed to be there, leading to potentially autoimmune disease. And so we want to stop it as soon as we can stop it, so we're not going down that route. Okay, moving on, let's talk a little bit about hormones. So there are mitochondrial toxins, so like alcohol. I know, it's a tough one. People love alcohol. I love wine. I love good beer. Try to minimize it, right? But it is a toxin. There's not alcohol that really is good for us, especially today's alcohol. Good real fermented wine that's not full of pesticides and herbicides, and it's lower in alcohol, is that, maybe have some benefits to it, a little resveratrol. I don't know, it's fermented, as long as there's still microbes in it, right? It's a possibility. That's how it started out. Beer and wine both started out, I know I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but as a ferment, and so you've got good healthy microbes in there that are producing alcohol. And so, it's fun, it's social. I'm not, telling anybody to go and be a teetotaler unless you just want to be, which is fine. But you've got to keep in mind that the stuff today is not doing us any good, right? And so we've got mold and plastic. So they inhibit what's called the STAR enzyme, which initiates sex hormone production. So if they're inhibiting, right, then we're not getting the sex hormone production that we need. So it can be, again, going back to the hormonal dysfunction, women with PMDD, massive PMS, the pain that women can experience that puts them in, the emergency department every month. It's awful. It can be really hard. It can be really hard on a family. So we want to make sure that we are getting rid of all of these things that are super toxic to us. So let's see, other things. So estrogen's converted by phase 1 liver detoxification. So we're talking about phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Phase 1 is where you have your fat soluble toxins that then convert into, or convert to water soluble throughout the phase 2 process, and then phase 3 is the elimination process. And so what can happen is that these catechol estrogens become quinones, and these quinones can cause DNA damage. So if I'm looking at, say we do a Dutch test for women, men too can do a Dutch test, but it's a dried urine test that can measure our hormones. It can measure a lot of our hormones. It can measure DHE, all of our estrogens, our androgenic hormones, cortisol, our adrenal hormones, that kind of thing. And so when we see there is one specific type of estrogen metabolite that can go, there's an arrow on the test, and it goes down to this particular, it's a quinone, right? That can cause DNA damage. So if that's elevated and going down that pathway, then it's a real problem. I've seen it quite a few times, and so we want to really start to work on our microbiome and our detoxification in order to allow that specific metabolite to be eliminated. So we want to balance that out. So these estrogen quinones become prebiotics for yeast. How crazy is that? So it can lead to fungal overgrowth, and then a Th2 immune skew and inflammation. So there are multiple parts of the immune system, right? And so specifically, these aren't the only ones, but we've got Th1 and Th2, and so this is what is pushing this Th2 part of the immune system. And so, and we talk about this all the time, is that, chronic inflammation it's just going to push cortisol, right? Chronic inflammation is stressful. So we think of stress that's outside of our environment, essentially, right? So whether it's work stress or family stress or financial stress, it's all stress. But internal stress is inflammation. It's not controlling, whatever conditions are going on internally that just causes, whether it's a small little fire that's just, kind of poking at the bare fire, or if it's a really big inflammatory fire. And so it can cause hormonal burnout, and so your progesterone drops, your testosterone drops. We see this a lot in men if they are stressed, if they're eating a lot of sugar, if they're drinking a lot, right? And so we have this belly that can develop, and that belly is going to be, it's going to have more estrogen in it, right? And so what happens then is the testosterone then aromatizes or converts into estrogen. So men have more estrogen than they should. And so this is what we're talking about when we're talking about andropause. It can happen. It's not supposed to happen, but it can happen to men if there is enough imbalance there, and too much estrogen. They get depressed and unmotivated and sad, and this is a huge problem for a man who is supposed to be motivated. They're supposed to, they have a job to do, right? And so it can be a real problem for a man who doesn't know how to manage this type of depression and this type of unmotivation. And so we want to balance out those hormones so we can bring that back. It also impacts brain function. Testosterone is really protective of the brain for men. Estrogen is protective of the brain for women. So we want to have those throughout life. Even as we move into our later years, we've got to have those hormones because they're protective. And so this one of the comments, it creates a loop of immune exhaustion, hormone imbalance that spreads as mystery fatigue, infertility, insomnia, or weight gain, right? So these are the things that we see and we hear all the time. So I think real quick, I need to take a quick break. I know we're already moving toward our time. We got about 10 more minutes. I want to talk about our sponsor because Susan Drake is amazing. She has these really cool products that are specifically for practitioners to use in their clinics. But if you are not a practitioner, you can ask for these things. So she's got amazing peptides. She's got new BioAge that's got all of these peptides that can be super supportive of gut health, can be supportive of autoimmune disease and inflammation and cognitive health. This is really one of the emerging, I mean, it's been years now that they've been around, but really starting to penetrate the market and frustrating the pharmaceutical industry because it works so well, right? But peptides are fascinating. They're awesome in the way that they work. Our bodies produce peptides naturally. Not all of these are, natural peptides. They can be synthetically created, but they are beneficial in many, many cases for these chronic conditions that we deal with on a regular basis. So, she's got stem cells and exosomes. She's got a kind of this new cool food sensitivity test, the IV therapy, and then some specialty lab testing, that kind of thing. So Mountain Medical Concepts, reach out to Susan if you're a practitioner to learn more about what she has. They're great things, great products. And then, if you are someone just looking for these things, then ask your practitioner for them because they're pretty cool and they work really well. So thank you so much to Susan because she's a great friend. She's got really cool stuff. We'll talk about this real quick since I have it up. This is, I did this last week because we're talking about dogs, and Teef is a really cool prebiotic for oral health for dogs, but they have it for humans too. And so we want to make sure that, as we're talking about the good healthy bugs, we want to make sure that we're supporting our oral health. There are bugs that are specific to oral health that can create dysfunction, such as cavities, receding gums. If we end up having a root canal, if you have a root canal, please go get a cone beam scan and make sure that it's not infected, because the likelihood, I was at a conference, it's been several years ago now, but that they said that 100%, it was a biological dentist on stage who was presenting, 100% of root canals are infected. So what does that mean? That means that our our vascular system is loaded with these anaerobic bacteria from the mouth, right? So we have these tubules that go from the jaw throughout the system, and so what happens? Lots of things can happen. You think about, um, you know, cardiovascular disease is probably one of the bigger ones, but there are lots of things that can happen if we have this systemic infection leading from um, root canal. So go get it checked out. It's a cone beam scan. Ask your biological dentist if they have a cone beam scan. I don't know a lot of regular dentists. I don't know a lot of dentists anyway, but regular dentists, they don't usually have cone beam scans, so it's usually the biological dentist. So look for that. It's a big deal. It really is a big deal. Okay, so moving on and talking a little bit about constipation. The thing that people really love to talk about is poop, right? But it's a part of the body. It's how it works, and it's how it's important for us to make sure, as I said earlier, that we're going every day. If we're not going every single day, we need to make it a priority and figure out how to do it, because it will sit and create problems for us. I know we've kind of hit on some of this stuff already. I'm just kind of going by my notes. But it can recirculate toxins if we're not going every day. It can recirculate estrogens. So bile from the gallbladder it binds to toxins. So we've got to make sure that we have a gallbladder that's functioning well, that's producing bile. If you don't have a gallbladder, make sure you go get on digestive enzymes with ox bile that's high in lipase. We're not told that. I have my gallbladder, but 95% of the people I work with who have had cholecystectomy have never been told they need to take a digestive enzyme. They need to have the ability to break down fats and use the ox bile for the bile salts to emulsify and break down fats. And if we don't have a gallbladder, we can't do that. What happens? Lots of GI issues. That then are going to push. It's going to create microbial disruption, and then the list goes on. So there was a time I had one client who I put her on a digestive enzyme, and like all of her issues went away. Like, amazing, right? I mean, if only it was that simple for everyone, but it was for her. And so if you don't have a gallbladder, digestive enzyme high in lipase with ox bile, go get it. All right. What else do we have? Yeah, so the kidney can back up and become overwhelmed. The skin can back up and become overwhelmed. And so when we have dysbiosis, there can be a situation where we have what's called beta-glucuronidase, which can be overproduced. And so we can see this on lab tests. I know I tend to use Vibrant's lab test, or Vibrant's Gut Zoomer more often than not. Microbiome Labs has one that I'm wanting to use that I've not used yet, but Microbiome Labs is a great company. And so the bacterial enzyme, so beta-glucuronidase is the bacterial enzyme that unpacks toxins in your liver already bagged, putting them back into circulation. And so that's what we don't want. We don't want toxins to go back into circulation. We want them to be released from the tissues, and we want them to be eliminated. If we're not eliminating properly, right, then we may mobilize toxins from the tissues, but then it just recirculates, and then we feel like trash, and we're really unhappy, and we don't feel good. And a lot of times, we go through a detox and we're not eliminating properly. Like, okay, I'm going to support my liver and I'm going to do this detox, and we don't poop. Well, then you might mobilize toxins, and they're just going to just make everything angry. So it is normal to have symptoms from a detox, but we want to make sure that they are being moved out of the body. Okay, let's see, what else do we have here? These are case stories. These are not my case stories. These come from the conference that I was at, but this one specifically was prostate hypertrophy. That's an easy one. So it was the largest documented volume reduction without surgery. So because they cleared the toxins, they repaired the microbiome, and they lowered local inflammation. So these things sound easy. They're not really easy, but I want to talk about these cases that they presented because it can be done, right? We don't have to always think that for men, if you've got a high PSA, that you have to be put on drugs, right? There are things that we can do. Everything is because of inflammation. We just have to understand the why behind the inflammation, right? Always ask why. Always ask why. So there is this fibromyalgia and trauma patient that that one of the practitioners presenting talked about, and so it resolved through gut repair, through trauma work. Trauma acts like an antibiotic because it's a stressor in the gut, right? So essentially, when we say it that way, these microbes, they react to stress in the body, and if they don't want to be in a stressful body, they're going to leave. So stress is something that we have to manage, right? We have to learn to, if you're not doing it already, to be still, to meditate, to pray. First thing in the morning, get up, take your time. If you don't pray, start praying. Just going to say it, it's a big deal. But take your time to be still. Praying this is the way I see it. This was, it's not something that I thought about. It's somebody that's told me this and it stuck with me. But praying is talking to God, and meditating is allowing God to talk to you. So I have my times where I, pray early. I missed it today, super early day. My husband got, what did he get? Business of the year for our local business association. Or it's like a combo business association. So that was super cool. But anyway, so did that this morning. But on days like today when it's beautiful outside, the sun's out, I go outside and I'll lay in the sun, and that's how I try to be still. I try to make my brain be still. It doesn't always work. It can be a hard thing to do, but that's when I try to sit and meditate and let God speak to me. Okay, so there is also an autism spectrum case. So one of the comments of this person who was really, really struggling said she felt like her brain was growing. So she had improvements in her prefrontal cortex after microbiome support and detox. So, and I think if I remember correctly, one of the things she said is this what it feels like to have a functional prefrontal cortex. So really cool stuff, the things that we can impact just by addressing inflammation, addressing detox, and supporting the microbiome. So HPV cervical dysplasia, so it's, let's see, cleared using vaginal microbiome protocol and essential oils. And so one of the comments from the speaker was, these aren't miracles. These are what happen when we stop suppressing symptoms and start healing at the root. So microbiome support, obviously in the GI, but in the oral cavity. For women, we're supposed to have a very acidic vaginal cavity, and if it's not acidic enough, other things are going to grow. And so we want to, we have areas in our body that are more acidic and more alkaline, and that's what helps to support the proper microbes that are supposed to be there. And so we want to make sure that we're supporting those. We can actually support the vaginal microbiome by supporting the GI, the gut microbiome. It's amazing, but it's true. So keep that in mind for those of you who are struggling. Really digging into what it is that you need to do to support the vaginal microbiome and make sure it's acidic enough. Okay. All right. I am out of time. So I always have more notes than I have time for anyway. But that's the beautiful thing about this, because we can do it again. And I hope it's something that that you can take home with you. I hope that you learn some things. I learned some things, which is why I go to these conferences. And I wanted to share. But I think I think the biggest takeaway is that the microbiome, our gut microbiome, is spread out through everything that we do, right? If you don't do anything else, it's support the microbiome the best that you can, whether that's through the specific fibers and prebiotics, fruits and vegetables. If you need to, we talked about making your own therapeutic yogurt, whether that is A2 dairy based, whether it's nut based, whether it's goat milk based, whatever it is. You can do that. I can help you with that if that's something that you're looking for. It's part of my program here, depending on the information that we have, right? But these are the things that can be super, I mean, they can be game changers. I mean, case study after case study after case study after case study, you support the microbiome strategically, right? And it can help manage, mitigate, eliminate a lot of the things that we struggle with. So, but when I say strategically, we also have to remember that we might be taking probiotics that are no longer alive. They still do some good things, right? The metabolites of them are there, but we still we want live microbes. But we also we want to be sure that we're taking the right ones, because we can take probiotics that are not that are not the right ones that we need, and then we can have too many. It's like too much of a good thing, right? We don't always want too much of a good thing, and so it can create more problems as well. So this is why you can do some of the the keystone formulas. Those are, I think those can be pretty broad, but it's still not for everyone. But doing GI testing can be super helpful for understanding your specific microbial makeup, where the dysfunction lies, and and then which microbes to bring in that can help balance that out. That's really the key, is balance, and allowing the good bugs to then control all the other ones, even the pathogenic bugs, right? If you have a good, healthy, robust microbiome, it can help to address and mitigate and hopefully eliminate the pathogens that come in, because that's what it does. It's like fighting forest, right? It's this little world that is not us, but it's a huge part of us, right? It impacts our mental and emotional health. It impacts everything. But there are these little guys in there that are just, doing their jobs to try to doing their best to keep us alive and keep us well. So really cool stuff. I'm going to stop there, and we will pick up probably more on this later, but feel free to reach out if you have questions about anything. Look at your Precision Wellness Blueprint. Like I said, it's $47. You get a report from me. Fill out an intake, get a report from me. We'll chat about it for 45 minutes, and then we'll go from there. If you want more, then great. If that's enough for you, then that's great as well. But it's been a lot of fun, because people really learn some super detailed stuff about themselves that they don't usually, that they wouldn't have known otherwise. I mean, it's stuff that you can find out, but it's pretty cool. Depending on the information that we put in, the more we put in, the more we can get out of it. So you can find me, Taste Life Nutrition, on all the socials. Of course, the website. You can find me here every Thursday, 10 a.m. Mountain Time, streaming live on the one and only KUHSdenver.com. Then you'll find us on any of the podcasts, your favorite podcast sites, where we are the Taste Life Nutrition Podcast. So I'm grateful for all of you. I see a lot of you up hanging out. And Ron Ben Joseph, you're an amazing person. Thank you for all of your help. And everybody, just let me know how I can be be a resource, be supportive of you, your journey, whatever it is. So have a wonderful, wonderful day. God bless all of you. We'll see you next time. Bye.